Hello friends, good evening and welcome to another session of Tech Tablet Daily Dose with Varun Rao. In today's session, we would be looking at some more concepts of ABAP that are related to interview question and answers. And the topic that I've chosen for today is, data migration. So the aim of the session would be to look at some very frequently asked basic level questions or mediocre level questions of SAP ABAP uh, data migration, right? And what are the general business expectations from an SAP ABAP developer, and how do we answer in an interview, right? So to begin with, when we talk of technical questions or questions of technical nature, then the interviewer would first look at the way you answer and how confidently you're answering, as I've already told in many videos. And the most important thing is he would definitely be testing your practical knowledge on the same, right? So whenever you're answering, make it a point to explain the same with a case study, or with an example, or maybe a related table, or whatever you're trying to migrate, or just try to put it with a case study, or with an example that you've already worked upon. That should give you an edge over others. Right now, looking into data migration, let us just begin with the questions of data migration. Yeah, so there are two ways, or two steps that are involved in data migration. So that is what brings us to the first question, that is, what are the common steps involved in data migration? So the first thing that we do is you upload a flat file from the legacy system to an internal table, right? And then you validate the same, whatever you have uploaded, right, to an internal table, you validate it. Post which you record the screen using a T code, that is SHDB, right? And you convert the screen flow recording into a program, which means here SHDB would convert the screen flow that you have already generated into a program. Right now, this program that you have generated, you have to copy the system generated subroutines as well, apart from the program, and you have to paste them within the loop of flat file of an internal table, right? Then you have to comment the original values which are passed by default, right? Because you're not passing all the default values, you're passing the values which you require, so that has to be ensured, otherwise you would definitely have inconsistencies. And then you have to pass the flat file fields, the fields of the flat file, to the screen level fields instead of the commented values. See, now you have commented in your previous step, and in the next step you pass the values of the fields that you require, not to the commented values but to the values that you require. Or there is also an alternate to this, and the alternate is you could analyze the screen and the fields, field details using the same T code, that is SHDB. Post which you can prepare a flat file and upload the data from the flat file to an internal table. Now it is not necessary that you have to upload a flat file to an internal table always. You could also use a BDC program. You could create a you could create a program for yourself, and you could upload the same. Then for each and every record that is there in the internal table, we collect the screen and field details to automate the transaction. Now why do we require to automate the transaction? Because you don't do it manually each and every time. That becomes a hell lot of a problem, right? So to avoid that, we automate the transaction. And then for each record in the internal table, you call the transaction as per your requirement, right? So this is what these are, yeah, these are the general steps that are involved in data migration. Now please pay attention that these are the most common steps. It is not that these are the only steps involved, right? The second question is, what is LSMW? Just some basics of data migration, and or I would say a variant of data migration, that is LSMW, which is abbreviated as Legacy System Migration Workbench. Now it is the system provided tool, okay, and here we generally migrate or convert the legacy system data, and the T code, as you know it, it is LSMW. Now we look at what are the various steps that you got to perform in LSMW. The first thing that you do, as it's written here, is you maintain object attributes, you maintain the source structure, you maintain the source fields. See, now source structure is different and source field is different. Yeah, please pay attention to this. Then you also maintain the relationship of the structure, right? The structure relation is very important. Then you have the mapping. Right now, what do we do in mapping is you target from where to where you have to convert. All right, and then you maintain some fixed values, translations, or user defined subroutines as per the requirement. and then you specify and assign the files as well. Right now, this is where you are done with the first part. Now coming to the second part, you have to read the data, then you have to display the data that's already been read. As per the point number 10, it says display read data, which means that after the data is read, you have to display the data that's already been read. Okay, then you got to convert the data and display the converted data. See, every time you read or you convert, displaying the data is very important. Finally, you create a batch input session and you have to run this, right? So these are the general steps that are involved in LSMW. Now the next general, or the next probable question is, how do you handle table control in BDC, right? So talking of BDC level conversion, which is another variant of data migration, here table control is generally used to maintain multiple line items, right? It's not for a single line item, this is for multiple line items of a particular functional T code, that is BDC. And you also use SHDB. You have different T codes that are involved here. So what we do initially is we split the flat file internal table into a header and item related table by setting a loop, right? And this loop is set at the flat file of an internal table. Keep this in your mind, right? Then you record the screen flow. The screen flow is to be recorded every time you do it, okay? Even if you're creating or even if you're changing, no matter what, you record the screen flow while maintaining the header and the items in the functional T code using SHDB, right? We've just seen this T code. Then you make the item number as dynamic using, okay, now how do we make this dynamic is, you concatenate the statements and you pass the concatenated field name for the screen field, okay, within the loop of the item in the internal table. Or you can also do this while processing the items, or while processing the entries, okay. So these are the way, or this is the way how you handle table control in BDC. The last point is important, right? The item number is to be made dynamic. And how is it made dynamic? By concatenating the statements and passing these concatenated statements, or the field names for the screen field within the loop of internal table. Okay, please keep this in your mind, because this is generally a probability to ask how to handle table control in BDC. Then you have how to write ABAP code in LSMW. Okay, now this is a very easy piece of thing. There's a change pencil icon which appears beside the recording screen field. You just have to click on it. And this is not just for LSMW. If you have to create anything or change anything, this pencil icon is generally used to ensure that you would also be able to edit it. Okay. Then finally we have on the fifth question, we have, which method would you prefer to migrate the data if the method is not mentioned, right? So if the method is not mentioned, then we generally go for call transaction method, right? We do not go for anything else if it is not mentioned, okay. And how do you run a session, or recording in the background? If you have to do that, then there is this RSBDC SUB, right? So you got to schedule, or you got to schedule the RSBDC SUB to ensure that it runs periodically in one or more background jobs. And this is done through the T code SM36, right? So in SM36 you got this RSBDC SUB, wherein you give what is the periodicity in which you want it to handle the background job. Or we can also submit, see, now there are two way options again. We could also submit the program RSBDC SUB within the BDC program itself, because of which it would automatically keep doing the required. The seventh question is, what are the function modules associated with BDC session method? Yeah, so basically there are three function modules, okay? One being BDC open group, one being BDC insert, and the other being BDC close group. Now when we talk of BDC open group, here we create the session in SM35. Okay, now if you just remember, SM36 is to run in the background and SM35 is for BDC open group. Okay, then you have BDC insert, wherein you could insert a flat file data or a flat file with data through a sequence of specified transactions while you're processing the created screen. Okay, and then finally you have BDC close group. In this, what you're doing is you're closing the group or the session, or you're unlocking the created session. So these are the two things that you do in BDC close group, right? So there are three function modules that are associated. One being BDC open group, BDC insert, and BDC close group. And the eighth thing is, how do we know if you can print a session in log file? There is this T code, right? That is RSBDC log, that is RSBDC log, right? And you just have to execute this if you want to print a session of a log file. Okay, now this brings us to the eighth question, and finally you have two questions remaining, that is ninth and 10th. In the ninth question, you have how do you export a session. Again, you got to go to SM35. There you would have this utilities option, and there you can go ahead and export the session. And there is this BDC REC CX1, right? Now this is a standard program, guys. Now this is generally asked in interviews, and this BDC REC CX1 is a standard program that is generated from recording, right? Whenever you're doing a recording in a standard program which contains all the reusable declarations, right? Now every word here is important. Here your file is, or your recording is containing the reusable declarations or the reusable subroutine definitions, right? Then it is called BDC REC CX1, and this is for all BDC programs, right? I'll just read it out again. In a standard program generated from recording which contains all the reusable declarations and also the reusable subroutine definitions, right? These two reusable declarations and definitions for each and every BDC program is what brings us to BDC REX CX1. So if you have any queries, I would be more than glad to answer them. If you could just comment on the section that you see right below. Do share if you find this useful, right? And I hope you have enjoyed the session. Stay tuned and subscribe to Tech Tablet for many more videos like these to come, and a lot of knowledge yet to be exchanged between us. I hope you've had a good session, and I hope you would present these skills in your interview, and you would come out with flying colors. So all the best, do well, and stay subscribed to this channel. Thank you for watching.